Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Jordan here, and on today's video we're going to be describing and just walking through my entire art process on my current digital piece. I learned a few new techniques in ibispaint, so I was like, I'm going to show you guys. If you didn't know, now you will know, and that's pretty much it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, so if I'm being honest with y'all, I literally pulled this sketch out of like the archives because I did this back before the Wukong game came out. So think about it, it's been like 6 months, but I was like, I want to finish it. Like, I really think that I can make something nice, and I was just recently rewatching the gameplay of Wukong, so it kind of got me like in like the moment again, and I was like, ooh, like I want to finish this drawing. Like, I really love the Legend of Wukong. It's one of my favorites, so let me just like hunker down and actually finish it and stop being a little wimp about it and just get it done, especially because like it was the holidays and I was like, I have a little bit of free time, like why not just do it, girl, like you want to do it. Now, I can't even really explain the sketching process of this because I just threw it together. I really woke up, it was like 10 a.m. on like a Saturday, and I just saw this reference image and I just started drawing. That was it. Like, I didn't think much of it. I saw this one person say, no thinking, just do, and that's been like my motto for like the past 5 months. So yeah, I don't have any tips on that. I've done like videos on how I do my anatomy, and it hasn't changed since. So if you want to check those out. But it's honestly just like a bunch of shapes that you just put over top of each other, and eventually something works out. But I will do more like in-depth videos in the future if you guys would like. Now, when it came to doing this background, I've seen a lot of artists do this, where they will just like put a bunch of colors down in a vague kind of like, this is what you're looking at, but maybe it's not what you're looking at kind of way, and then they'll just blur it. And I didn't think that was possible in ibispaint. I didn't, but I've recently discovered the FX tab of ibispaint, or I've recently like explored it. I've always seen it there, I've always known it was there. I didn't really know like what it was or how it worked for a while, but I've been on TikTok a lot recently, and I've been scrolling and I've seen a bunch of people talking about it, so I was like, ooh, if they're looking at a couple of tutorials, I think I can do it. So Sam does art, he does this type of background a lot. Like I say, they just add like a bunch of like vague idea of what you're looking at, just like a bunch of colored blobs, and then they go over top of it and they blur it. And that's pretty much what I did here. I was looking at the reference photo, I was like, okay, there's some buildings, there's some clouds, there's obviously like a sky. We're going to add all that in just based off what we're seeing. It's not like heavy detail, but it's there, right? I just used the eyedropper tool to pick the colors. I wasn't thinking heavy about like what looked right or what looked wrong. I was like, it's just going to be in the background anyway, so it can't pop too much, but it just has to kind of marry well with the final image. So like I said before, once all the colors were laid down, I went to the FX tab, I went to the blur section, and I just picked the Gaussian blur, and I put it at about, I want to say 40%. Yeah, like 40 45, around that area. I think, okay, no, it said I did 38. Apparently I did 38%. I think I've raised it a little bit by the end of the image, but like 38 to 45 I think was the range that I played around with a little bit, and I ended up liking it because I thought it still like looked like what I was looking at, but it wasn't super heavy detail, so it really got my like point across in the original piece, or I mean in the final piece. When it came to rendering Sun Wukong, or when it came to rendering Wukong, I used this technique that I saw this one artist use. His name is Shin Yon on YouTube. Shout out to him, one of my favorites. And obviously other artists have done it, but I watch him a lot, so I see him do it the most. And pretty much it's just called a clipping mask. I know you're probably like, oh my god, wow girl, you're just discovering clipping mask. Yes, in a sense I am. Before, I just never really used it before. Like, I had always seen it, but I never used it. I just stuck to alpha lock because it was easier for my brain to understand. But here recently I was like, I'm just take the leap and I'm gonna just do a clipping mask. Whenever I would do it before, it just seemed unnecessary to me. But this time when I actually stuck it out, I was like, you know what? They're actually kind of right about this one. It was easier. It was kind of easier because it made me more comfortable with taking a risk because I didn't have to refill in the entire layer again. Like, this isn't Procreate. I got on fancy tools. I can't just bucket drop the entire shape. Like, it's going to take me a million bucket drops to get to the final image of this thing. So I was like, you know what, let me try the clipping mask, and I ended up really liking it. If I had to describe to you like clipping mask versus alpha lock, because that's what I was using before, clipping mask gives you this like imaginary layer above what you're working on, versus where alpha lock is the actual layer. There's nothing imaginary about it. I color something in, I use alpha lock, now I'm coloring on that exact same layer on that exact same subject, versus versus clipping mask, where it's almost the exact opposite, where you could draw something, create a fake layer over top of that. I keep saying fake, it's a real layer, but in my mind it's fake. Create a fake layer on top of that, and now you're just drawing on top of that layer, but you're never messing up the integrity of the layer that you're drawing on. And I like that. I appreciate that, especially as someone who's always constantly like changing their mind on stuff. I was like, ooh, that's good. Because usually before, when I would do alpha lock, I would create like I would create another layer. So I'll create the one layer, then I will alpha lock it, then I'll make another layer again just in case I didn't like it. With clipping mask, I don't have to do that, because that clipping mask layer is that, I keep saying imaginary or fake, but it's not. It is that layer in case I just don't want to use it anymore. I can just erase it. I can just delete it. The layer's gone, and now my original subject is not messed up. The integrity of the original subject isn't messed up, and that's why I think I really like it way more than the alpha lock. So that's why I'm filling in this entire piece that you see right here. I'm filling in with pink, and this also kind of acts as like a underpaint layer as well, so that's also really good if you like that sort of drawing thing. If you want your underlayer to like peek through a little bit, this is also good to fill in the entire subject first and then just render on top of that. When it came to picking the colors, I just used the Lego Wukong. I thought this was a really cute design. I like that it was like very digestible and easy to understand, so I just dropped the colors, adjusted them a little bit to make them vibrant, and I pretty much stuck with that design. I was like, oh, that's cute, like I really like that, we're gonna steal that. I do this a lot where I just like image grab or color grab, you know, like colors from my reference photo. But keep in mind though that the reference photo is made up of a lot of different colors, so the eyedropper tool might not grab the exact same one that you're looking at, so you might have to adjust it a little bit. This happens with me a lot for some odd reason. Ibispaint will grab like the one pixel next to the color I'm trying to get, and it just ends up looking off, and then you have to factor in the fact that like every other color is surrounding that color. So if you're not using those exact same like colors that are surrounding the colors, then like it's going to look weird, it's going to look a little bit off. And that was what was happening to me. Everything was kind of like green, and I was like, what is this weird sickly color? I just ended up pushing the color wheel more to red, and it ended up fixing it. So that was like a little thing I wanted to mention, because I do that a lot, and I say that I do that a lot, but I also do end up like switching my colors a little bit too. So in case you're a little bit confused, that's why they always are just a little bit different. When it came to picking the colors for the dragon, I tried to keep in mind that I'm going to add a secondary shadow on top to add to the level of intensity that I wanted the photo to give. And honestly, this part was a little bit confusing to me, because even though I was using the eyedropper tool, the colors were not giving me what I needed them to give, because I was eyedropping the color from the image that already had a shadow conveyed onto it. So I was kind of figuring out like, I knew I wanted the color to be bright and I knew I wanted to pop at you, but I also didn't want it to be, I just didn't want it to look kind of boring. So I was like, I guess I'll just go with like the primary color route, and when I add the colors on top, or the shadows on top, hopefully I'll just pick a shadow that I ended up doing. I just picked like a colored shadow that was still kind of bright, if that makes sense, but obviously added the shadow that needed to be added. Because sometimes I forget that like you can draw in lighting. You don't necessarily have to do like a color layer, and then do shadow on top. You don't have to do that. That's just what most people do, but you don't have to do that. And I think I'm kind of struggling if I should do that or not. But I'm just picking like super light kind of faded colors or washed out colors, and then went in with another shadow on top, and I ended up liking that result better. When it came to rendering the dragon, even though I wanted it to really convey the look of the Ari Pan photo, I also didn't want it to be kind of boring. I was like, like hers is just flat colors, and I love that, and I probably should have just stuck to that, but I just started adding these little details, and I was like, these little details can't hurt, like it's fine. But I tried my best. I was like, I'm not going to do too much. I'm not going to go overboard. So I kind of just left the little sparkles on the nose, and that was about it. And then I immediately started working on the shadows, because I didn't necessarily want this to take like forever. Now the shadows took me probably the longest out of everything. Like getting down the flat colors, that was easy. Getting down the background, that was easy. That probably took, no lie, 15 minutes each. Like it was not long at all. It was this like figuring out how to get the shadows to convey what the shadows in the original image were conveying. I was like, this is just a little weird to me. So I placed down everything on a multiply layer, and then this is at full opacity. I'm pretty sure this is the multiply layer at full opacity. I'm using like a burnt orangey color, but I ended up switching that later on, you'll see. But right now it is like a burnt orange color. I'm just laying down the shadows in the way that they are in the original image, and then with the cape I'm just kind of winging what I think the shadows would look like, because I'm not necessarily like sure. I'm like, oh, okay, if you had a cape under this, I think this is what the shadows would kind of look like. And I pretty much just did that for like this entire image, this entire like little part. I was just like, what are the shadows looking like? How dark should they be? How light should they be? Or what part of his body are they covering? I just wanted to make it really look like he's holding up this dragon, just like the original image. I wanted to really convey what the shadows were supposed to give, and I did that for, I want to say, like an hour. And I played around with the shadows and just did a bunch of things that I thought would look good. And I honestly started to get a little bit excited because I liked the way the details started popping out. I ended up doing, I want to say, 2 separate shadow layers, just because there were darker shadows, and not every single shadow is the same shade. So I did the darker shadows around Wukong, underneath the cape, and then a little bit on the fur, just to give and add that bit of like depth that I seen in the original photo. I also think by this point, I changed the shadows from like a yellowy, it was more like an ochre type of color, to, I want to say, like a blue, or like a blue-gray, because I thought that looked better than what the colors were giving me in the original image. I was like, it's just too yellowy. I don't know, it just wasn't really hitting in the way that I thought it was, and I was like, I have to change it. But I was just like, what do I do? So I went through like 4 different colors. I went through a reddish color, I kept the ochre orange, and then I did like a blue and almost a gray blue, and I ended up sticking with the gray blue. Once again, play around with a bunch of different methods. The multiply layer is super duper diverse. It doesn't have to always be used for shadows. I sometimes use it for highlights as well. Just anytime you want to give like a screen effect, like if you want to make someone have sunglasses, just go on the multiply layer. You can keep it fully opaque at the full opacity, or you can change it and play around with it differently. Like everyone's different. I usually always lighten the opacity. I feel like it can sometimes be a little bit too intense when it's at 100%. So I always go around for about 45. I think that's like a good place, depending on what you're doing. For shadows, I say 45 is like pretty good. At this point in the image, I started to add in all the final details. You probably can't tell, but I added a bit of like subsurface scattering to like Wukong and just his clothing. I was so confused. I was like, would you add subsurface scattering to his fur? Like, I guess in a way, but then I'm like, the clothes too. I think I'd just be adding it everywhere now that I figured out like what it is and how it can like elevate an image. I think I just added on everything. It doesn't have to go on everything. In fact, I don't think technically it does, but I do. I'll be adding it everywhere. I think it adds a little like nice little flair to it. Something that you'll probably notice that I do a lot is I always shrink the image and make it really small. I don't do it as much when I'm recording because I feel like it can it makes me, I feel like, a little bit sick, makes me a little bit nauseous to watch it back, and I end up cutting out a lot of it when you guys watch it, just so you guys don't get like sick about it. But the reason why I do it is because it's really helpful when looking at what needs to be fixed or what needs to be improved, especially for me and my values. I find that like making the image smaller really like makes me understand it, or helps me understand what pops out at you and what doesn't, because if I know a certain part of the drawing needs to be darker, when it's shrunken, that part should then pop out at you, or opposite for like a lighter color. So that's just what I do a lot too. Super random, but honestly pretty helpful. I think it's easier with digital because you can just shrink it, but if you're doing traditional, just like step away. Honestly, truly, it helps out a lot. A lot of these like end clips are just me adding detail that I told myself I wasn't going to add in the first place, but I was like, I'm working on pushing my drawings a little bit more and going a little bit of an extra mile. So I was like, I can add a little bit of pizzazz here and there and just really help it pop. And honestly, I ended up taking out the cape and added in like more shadows, fixing and finishing the line art. I even added in this like little background splash of color, and then these little orb thingies or like little confetti pieces, and I ended up really liking it, and I think it's really cute. It's one of my favorites that I did this year. I'm happy that I kind of stepped out of my comfort zone, experimented a little bit, finally learned some new techniques and applied the techniques that I've been seeing. If you want to see like this image, I guess in a better quality, see a little bit easier, my Instagram is in the description. It is on the screen as well. But yeah, once again, I thank you guys, and that's pretty much it. Thank you to everyone for tuning into today's video. I really appreciate it. Also, we hit 1,000 subs. I think at the time of filming this, we are at 1,200. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in. If there's 1,200 of you, or if there's 100 of you, or if there's 2 of you, I really appreciate it. And with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.